Hey sis, yo bro is live and we are crazy tonight.
We are never crazy, but yo, bro, how is it going?
Right in the right in the middle of I'm doing great myself, sis, but I'm right in the middle of a crazy world right now and I don't even know what to think. Can you get your bearings around what's happening in the world right now?
It's just a whole new thing, a new way of looking at stuff right now. A lot of people are having a rough time wrapping their brain around what needs to be done or what's happening around them and how it affects them, and it's very interesting. It it really has to have a whole different way of thinking.
Yeah, and I don't know what that thinking is because all the patterns are they're they're kind of out the window, and there's really sort of no equal stasis here because on the one hand everything's okay, but on the other hand, there's this coming pandemic that's a real danger to a significant number of folks, and it's we're frankly lucky it's not dangerous to a higher percentage of people, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, it's a whole new different way of thinking, and as you said, there's no pattern that to follow at this time, mainly because every single day something is changing. Some way that you have to act or interact or respond. And a lot of people can't get their footing because of this because they don't know what to do. And they're kind of just flailing around thinking, okay, now what? And so yeah, it's a whole way of thinking of things, and sometimes it's just too overwhelming to put into classification in itself. Um as we're recording this, I was watching on the news and heard that, Italy had the highest deaths in the last 24 hours, and all because they refused to give up their liberties of doing whatever they please. And then there's the whole trying to decide what to do with our country and how to handle it here in the United States, and how should we handle it and what's the best way to go. And it is the inevitable, and but we don't want to overwhelm the health system, but the health system is becoming overwhelmed because people are responding and panicking and flooding the doctors trying to figure out what's wrong with them. So get a simple cold and their first thought is that they're going to die, and it's hard to review it. Also, another thing I heard on the news is that Bill Gates, maybe somebody did a TED talk back in 2015 and said that um, we wouldn't, how we would be wiped out would be by a huge virus, and you know how millions of people in the population would be um, killed or hurt would be through a virus, because you'd be feeling good and get on a plane or get somewhere or go to the store and pass it along, and lots of people would get sick, and it would really make a difference on the infrastructure of how we live because of this. And I thought that was quite fascinating that he thought of this dilemma back then.
Definitely.
What's your
So
thought on this?
so my first thought is just to note sort of the juxtaposition of keep calm and act normal, and yet right in the middle of a very uh, abnormal situation. So at this point in time, I'm going and getting some data from one of the websites, and it says that there are 272,000 total confirmed cases worldwide, and um, 11,311 deaths as of, this moment right now. So that's about as serious as it can be. And, there's a lot of people are saying things on social media like, statistically speaking, this isn't any worse than, um, than the flu, for example. And they may be right. Maybe this is no worse than the flu in a statistical sense, but for certain people, certain population groups, especially older people, this is an extremely dangerous virus. And so, if you have a parent or a grandparent past that age, you really want to be concerned for them at this point that they not be exposed to this if at all possible, because it is so serious to them.
Right. And two is that it's such a new virus that we really can't compare. Yeah, the flu has, shows that has a lot of dangers to it as well. But the thing is that we're seeing that with the flu, we have something to help counteract it. And it doesn't occur as quickly and as frequently as this virus is doing. And it's hitting multiple people in a large quantity of people in a very short period of time. Whereas the flu, we have the flu season and you'll have your cases and they'll report, the people who pass away from it or who recover from it. And the numbers, are pretty staggering. But the amount of how many people got the flu comparatively is much smaller than the amount of people who've gotten this virus in such a short period of time. And
Right.
I think that in itself has to be recognized that, yeah, it is it is a virus and it is we can fight it, and a lot of people have the ability with your immunity to have mild symptoms or no symptoms, or like they would if someone who had the flu. And then there's the people who aren't, and yeah, it is showing that it's hitting the elderly, but it's also showing that the younger crowd is also getting affected by this as well. It's not just the older people. Our age, especially our age, there's plenty of cases that are your and our age, and we're not considered elderly. And millennials, they don't think that that can happen to them. And there are starting to show some cases that healthy millennials are having symptoms, better recovery, but still have symptoms. So I think just being kind of open to understanding that it's not just they're just not just doing this so that we can have the economy drop from under us. There's reasons behind trying to slow this down so that I heard one official saying, what not to do is Italy's greatest show on this particular piece is, what are things you should not do? Um, because of the mortality rate of how bad this can turn out.
Well, I think there is a sense too that even young people can be seriously affected by this virus, especially in cases where like there's another medical condition happening. So what I've heard or read on social media, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that people with one case I saw was a young lady who had beat breast cancer recently, but then her weakened system wasn't able to handle this virus. And I know I think it was a soccer coach or player in Spain who was facing leukemia, and then this virus, was the thing that pushed it over. So even young and healthy folks, could very well be surprised by how deadly it can be.
Right. I mean, there's no way of getting around it. You are going to get it. Your immunity is going to tell you how well or how harsh you're going to get it. And something is that you may think you're invincible, but your immunity might not have that ability or that capability to fight it off. A lot of young people may have pre-existing conditions that they're not aware of yet, because a lot of the times, symptoms don't manifest till they're older, and then they realize, when they get this virus and it affects them a lot harder than they should have, it could, manifest or show that that's because they had this underlying. So, it's good to be precautious. I know a lot of my consumers, major questions, what about the stores? How are we getting along? What about the virus? How does it affect you? And, why is hand washing so important? Which was a question I got today, which I thought was really good. And the thing is that we can destroy the virus by washing our hands and stopping it from transmitting it from us. But the thing is that it can sit and live on certain surfaces for for a long period of time, which is a lot longer than normal viruses do. I think I heard a on a like a paper box or a brown box, it can live up to a day. Plastic and metal, it can live up to a week. For some reason, copper kills it within 4 hours. But I mean, like, not a lot of people have copper surfaces sitting around. So just taking that time to, sanitize and disinfect and wash your hands is a great way to help slow the progression of that and help protect yourselves. And, you know, hand sanitizer, I've not always been the biggest fan of hand sanitizer. I'm always prefer to wash my hands, just because you sanitize your hands with a hand sanitizer. Yes, you'll kill 99% of that, whatever is on your hands, but you still have that actual soluble, that stuff that got the stuff on your hand in the first place. You didn't actually wash it off. It's just still sitting there. So if maybe that 0.1% decides to start doing its thing, but I don't say not to use it, because sometimes that's all you have is a hand sanitizer, which is great and an effective way to make sure you're trying to keep up with your hygiene. Washing your hands and hand sanitizer is the really important piece right now. And that will help slow it down because you're using good, hygiene and good sense to keep yourself well. And also, another one is how many times a day we touch our face and don't even realize we touch our face. People bite their nails, people rest their chin on their hand, people wipe their mouth off with their hand or scratch their nose or their eyes. We're constantly touching our face many, many times a day. And that's also why it's so important to hand sanitize and wash our hands, because that's, how we get it in ourselves. If it was sitting on a table, which is called a vector, which is an inanimate object or a person that is carrying the virus, and then you touch it and come in contact with it, and then whenever you touch and come in contact it and touch your face, that's how you get it. It's the cycle of the infection, first start of the infection.
We're right in the middle of very interesting times, I think, sis, is your point, and I think it's well said. Would you what would you say to people now? Today we talked about this at our last get together. So I think your point's well taken there, sis. What advice would you say today, given what we know at this stage, to young people who, they're not sure whether to take it seriously or not?
Kind of feel invincible and doesn't think it would happen to them.
Yeah.
Well, if you think back when we were younger, we really didn't think that stuff could harm us. But we also didn't think a lot of things could harm us. And, later we found out otherwise. I think best advice for young people right now is, stop, think about yourself and think about the others around you that you are affecting. Because, yeah, you may not get sick from this virus, but how do you know you're not going to take it home to a family member who can get sick from this virus and very sick and possibly not make it? And so it's not just you and your health that you have to concern yourself with, but you have to concern yourself with others and how what that can affect and what how that can affect them.
So just be considerate at this stage?
Yes, if they say to stay indoors and try not to get into groups, do that. I know it's inconvenient, especially for those extroverts out there who love to get out and do things and need that social interaction. There is enough social media and technology out there that you can still reach out to your friends and things like that through this during this time to help minimize that group mentality and possibly transmitting it to larger groups before the health system can handle it. So, be courteous, think of others, and, be conscious of your actions and wash your hands.